very warm welcome back to Team JLX Podcast. I hope you guys are good. Today we are going to be talking through holidays. Holidays have been big on my kind of chat at the moment, both on Instagram and generally with the team as well, with people booking holidays coming up and so on and so forth. So I wanted to jump on here, chat to you guys about some of the tips that I've been giving to them and some of the conversations that we've been having in the hope that perhaps it would help you as well. Now, just a little bit of background. Something I've noticed over the last few years, and it's not something I've really spoken about on Instagram or even on the podcast, to be honest, because I feel like many times these issues are not spoken about enough. And now that might sound ridiculous because how are they going to get spoken about more if I don't speak about them? But last year I came to this realization, and I've actually made a note of this so I have a little bit of a notes pad going basically on my phone that's just content ideas, and I was flicking through it because I wanted to find this thing. And last year I spoke about this, and I do think that when I didn't talk about it last year, the reason I didn't was because I wasn't truly sure why people were so anxious about holidays and the impact that that would have. And so last year when I was thinking about making content around this, I just thought, stay in your lane, don't say anything, because it's not you that feels anxious about this and despite the fact that I'd already helped so many people enjoy better holidays. So I think what I'm trying to say here is it was absolutely imposter syndrome on my part that I didn't talk about this last year, which is why I'm making such a big effort to talk about it this year, because I know for a fact that it will help, and it has already helped a ton of my clients over the last few years to have more enjoyable holidays, but also to actually, I think it's one thing to have a more enjoyable holiday. It's another thing to enjoy the build-up. It's another thing to then come back and enjoy that. And this is something that not a lot of people are talking about, the stress and the anxiety that women get pre-holiday, and men actually. That's an unfair comment. I should say men as well, because I include myself in this based on the fact that I've experienced these things in the past. And so it's not just the holiday, it's before the holiday, and it's cleaning up the mess, quote unquote, of what happens afterwards. So we're going to start first and foremost with booking the holiday. A holiday, when you book it, it's really exciting, isn't it? You're really pumped. Maybe you're going away with the girls, maybe you're going away with your family, your partner, whoever, but you're pumped, you're excited, days in the sun, mint. And I think that probably lasts for like 2 or 3 days, sometimes 4 days, sometimes 5 days, and then the reality sets in. Shit, I've booked a holiday. And then I think a series of 3 things begins to happen. You start to think about how uncomfortable you'll be on holiday or what the photos will look like. Then you start to think about what you look like now, how you feel now, and how you perceive yourself. And the third and final thing to all of that is then when you start to put a plan together that says, right, I need to change how I am now because I'm not comfortable if I were to take myself as I am now and put myself on holiday. The fundamental issue with that is that you right now are not going on that holiday. And secondly, there's a lot of different factors towards that because you've not had the build up yet. You've just had the instant fear factor that's come into it. I'm going to go a slight tangent here just to pre-warn you. I will come back. But this comes fully into one of the things I really don't like. And I don't know if gaslighting is the right terminology, but you know how loads of people on Instagram write things like, everyone's got a bikini body, just put on a bikini and walk outside. I've always found these to be really annoying. And I obviously don't wear a bikini. However, the reason I find it annoying is because I find it incredibly dismissive. I find it incredibly dismissive for people who don't truly believe that they have a bikini body. It's a bit like telling people who are very depressed, hey, everyone has the capacity to be happy, so you might as well just be happy. It's quite frankly the most nonsensical bullshit going. Now, I get the idea. I get the premise behind doing it. It's trying to encourage people that there isn't a set body type that is required to wear a bikini. But that's just it. Because in society, unfortunately, even still today, and there probably will be for a large amount of time going forward, in society today, there is still a quote unquote more acceptable body to be in a bikini. And therefore, the realities of it are that there is still a bikini body. There is still that body that people look for. Now, times have changed a lot, right? Times have changed a lot. We celebrate bodies in all shapes and sizes, which of course is fucking wonderful. But the thing that everyone seems to be forgetting is that, take me, I'm going to be 30 this year. So let's take everyone else who's roughly the same age as me, or even within like 2-3 years. you will have been exposed to, let's say when you really started to worry about that, may have been as young as 12, but let's say 15, middle teens. That's 15 years you've been exposed to headlines on newspapers, magazines talking about fat loss. I saw a thing yesterday where it was published a couple of years ago, which was like 15 of the worst beach bodies. It was a celebrity magazine, and they've basically gone out of their way to photograph 15 of the worst, quote, celebrity bodies, right? So let's say, for example, you have been, in the last 15 years, 10 years, whatever it is, you've been subjected to that all the time. Every day you go into the shop or you flick on Instagram, you go on the news, things like that, you'll have been subjected to that. So why people think it's going to be as easy as saying, you just have a bikini body, wear a bikini. It baffles me, and I do believe that it's very dismissive to the people who really struggle with it. I personally believe it would be far more constructive to actually say these things in a way of trying to support people who don't feel like they have a bikini body. And that's a very much difficult thing to do. And this is where I have my bugbear with social media. Because social media is so overcrowded at the moment, two things are happening. One, people are saying more things to become more relevant. And two, typically speaking, because it's such a short space of time you have, people are saying things without context. So what I do think, as my third point, is that the majority of people that you will see saying, hey, everyone's wearing a bikini body, has been through their fitness journey. They've been through the fitness journey. They've been through the journey. They've been through the mindset work. They've done the thing that they needed to do to feel more comfortable and confident. And they're speaking to their old self when they post that. They're speaking to their old self to say, look, you did have a body that was very acceptable. It's okay. And you should appreciate that. But the problem they're missing is that when they're posting that, they don't obviously say that. I think this is a perspective that I have, and this is how I view it. But they're missing that big fucking chunk in the middle. It's exactly the same as people who now are preaching about the importance of training for health and their cycle and all of that. And I think literally 12 months ago, you were going to compete. Where was your content on the importance of female cycle and health then? Non-fucking existent. Because, actually, I'm not even going to get into that now. The point I'm trying to make is this. Often people will post things about the journey they've been on, but when that journey doesn't come to fruition, they'll then post about the next thing. So take my example of people who go to compete, it doesn't work out for whatever reason, then they start coaching and posting on the importance of that health element of things. Now, I personally think that's very relevant. I think that's a good idea. It's good that they then recognize that. But what bugs me is that with that gap in the middle, they've been through that development, they've been through that journey, and a lot of people forget about those people haven't yet. So I am going to be talking in the next few minutes about what I personally think would be very beneficial to understand if you are going to be going on holiday and you are that anxious individual. You are that person who is starting to worry about how they look, how they feel, what their friends will think, what other people will think around the pool, and of course, kind of how the process goes. So the first thing I would say is this. Most of our opinions of ourselves in terms of how we look are driven by the way that we feel. And if you don't believe me, give me 2 minutes of your time and I will prove that to you. If you look at the female cycle, and I look at all of the clients I've had, and inside our coaching, we often ask our clients to post when their cycle is. The good thing about this is that A, it gives you a bit more data regarding body weight, but it also gives you a very good piece of information regarding people's mood. Now, if you're female listening to this, then the likelihood is you will be female. If you are, ask yourself this. When you are in the week before your period, so PMS, or during your period, how often are you the kindest to yourself? How often do you pick your body apart, pinch body fat areas, over body scan, body check consistently? How often do you do those things? Versus when you are in it's different for different women, but let's say your thriving phase, the week where you just feel absolutely bomb, right? In that week, there may still be those thought processes that pop up that make you feel a little more vulnerable and are more body checking and things like that. But typically, I think it would be very safe to assume that the week you are most kind to yourself is that one, and that's the week you feel most comfortable in your body. You might wear the shorts to the gym, you might wear the sports bra, you might take off the hoodie, those kinds of things. But in that PMS week, that would be the week where you don't. So this is a kind of example of how we feel in terms of physical impacts how we feel mentally. If you're someone who hasn't done a lot of training and you're booked a holiday, the first thing I'd encourage you to do is get training. If you are someone who already is training and you are worried about it, consider what sort of training you're doing and how much you're enjoying that and how it makes you feel afterwards. Are your training sessions taking you 2 hours for some godforsaken reason, or are they taking you 30 minutes, but actually we could spend more? So if they're taking you a really short period of time, probably not lifting heavy enough, probably not doing enough work if you're doing a hypertrophy focused program. So you will probably want to do a little bit more just so you get more response from the muscle. That response from the muscle will give you better internal feeling as a result. Similarly, if we then take the person who's doing the session over 2 hours, by the time you finish that fucking session, Christ, you'll be sitting there bored out of your skull, feeling rotten and fatigued. We don't want that either. We want a nice middle ground between the two things. So how you train is important. The next thing is how you're eating. Most people, the minute they think about holiday, they go full-blown salad, no carb, and typically speaking, and it's not for everyone, they will go very low in calories. The truth is, what that tends to do is it makes you, A, very flat. So because carbohydrate does a lot for the muscles, not only does it help you in your training sessions, but it makes your muscles look, gives it the shape, right? It's like the air to a balloon. Take that away, all of a sudden your muscles go a bit flat, your training feels a little bit flat, you don't have the pumps you would normally have. What do you get? You get a body that feels looser. You get a body that doesn't feel as toned and as tight, which is arguably the thing you're going for, right? So it's a bad idea to cut carbohydrates. Secondly, carbohydrates generally make you feel pretty good. And if you are struggling with your emotions, if you go and remove those carbohydrates before you have found a good enough way to replace that feeling you get from them, this is where sometimes the cyclic dieting comes in, the yo-yo dieting, or at the very worst, things like binge eating. So the first thing I would do is I would run 2 straight weeks, and we actually do this with our newer clients. I run 2 straight weeks matching calories to expenditure. So roughly at maintenance. Now you can go slightly under that if you want. I personally like to set my clients, if anything, slightly under or bang on maintenance, because they might start losing and that's quite motivating. But even if they don't, the feeling they're getting will be boosted by the work they're doing. So the focus comes to training. How do we feel? How do we feel during the session, but also after? And the really important thing here is that the training momentum helps you feel great. You feel great when you leave the gym, you feel great for going to the gym, and your muscles start to do their job, which means naturally our mood is improved as well. When you consider all of the above, what you've got is a stable starting point that has not been built on pure restriction. Now, because you're feeling so much better as a result of the training that you've been doing and the movement, maybe you're doing some steps, maybe even you're chucking a bit of a class in there or some cardio, love it for you, great. I genuinely mean that, by the way. Didn't mean for that to come out as sarcastic if it did. Love that for you. So what you can then start to do is decrease the carbohydrate, because what you're doing is, let's say this is your mood. Your mood is solely based on what you're eating at the moment if you're not doing much. Now, if we get that movement, you can reduce this, mood stays balanced. In fact, it's probably going to increase in its balance. So like I said, before we go removing everything, let's look at what we can add and let's look at how we can optimize. So we're adding the training, the great feels that gives us. How do we optimize? We'll optimize the diet, and we'll look at some more health-based foods. Single ingredient foods are a really good way to go. What I would also say is it is important to acknowledge that some foods you just won't be able to put down once you pick up, especially when you get into a diet phase. I've spoken about this so many times, but I know for myself, honey roasted cashews are an absolute no-no. If I'm dieting, I actually want a 3,000 calories worth of honey roasted cashews when my calories for dieting was 1850, close to 1900 at the time. So I nearly doubled what I should have been eating in a day. In fact, I did, because I'd already eaten my food. And I just thought, oh, I need some fats. So I bought some honey roasted cashew nuts. For those of you who know M&S, they do these little tubs of them. And I ate the whole tub. I just couldn't put them down. I couldn't put them down. I tell you what, I would have happily broken a vault in a bank to have got to the red. Like, they were so nice. I would have done anything to have finished them, because they were just so good. And also, at the end of a diet, typically you're so much more vulnerable as well, which is good to know. So there will be some foods you can't have in the house, and that's okay. Don't listen to any of your influencers who said you should put all your favourite food in your house, because fundamentally they do not know what it's like to not be able to pick those foods up when you really start going for them and they hit all the right signals, right? So it's okay. It's all right not to have them. Personally, I choose not to have sweets in the house or honey roasted cashews. One, because I'm a massive sweet fiend. And if I don't have them in mind, I won't eat them. You know, if I go to the shop, I'll see them, but The friction of buying them, putting them down, seeing them, I'm like, this is just not me. Whereas if I have them in the cupboard and I just happen to see them, all of a sudden I think, oh shit. Now, for those of you who have children or partners who like these things, what I suggest doing is putting them in a different cupboard that you don't normally go in and adding friction to that. So putting them in a pot, for example, so you can't just see, oh, a bag of Haribo, I'll eat that. Put them in a pot so that person has to actively open the pot in order to get them, and that means you can't see them. So that's a really good way to work around that. Now, that's how we would optimize that. In terms of the training and things going into it, I would train nice and hard, but I wouldn't do anything obsessive or anything crazy, because what we'll need to be able to do is pick this back up when you come back, purely because, I'll explain that in a second, but typically because what we'll want to do is make sure we are consistent and we're not just doing this for the holiday, we're doing this for the long term. Now, in terms of the holiday itself, people massively overstress themselves. And I spoke about this on one of my Instagram posts recently with a client of mine called Angie. And I've had loads of chats with clients, but this one just stuck out to me. She basically said, look, I'm going away for a couple of weeks and need some help. And the first question I always ask is, what's the goal? What is the goal that you have for the 2 weeks that you're away? And the reason I always start with this is because how can I give somebody advice when I have fuck all idea what they want out of this? You know, it'd be easy for me like, right, well, just buy all the food from the shops. It's all trackable. Take your scales. Fuck off. Like, that's, for me, if I had a coach and they told me to do that, I'd probably end my coaching with them, because that's just ridiculous. Now, if you're prepping for a show, very different, because it becomes, prep's a lifestyle. It's not a sport, to be honest. But the average Joe, so to speak, or Jane, for us, you know, if I book a holiday, it's because I want to spend quality time with my wife. I want to go away and I want to relax. I want to do some cool shit, some sports, some adrenaline things. I want to eat nice food. Now, the question I'll ask you and any of my clients is, how would you know? How would you know that you've had the best holiday? And often the question is, I'll feel relaxed. I'll feel rested. I'll have eaten some really nice food and I won't have worried about this or I won't have worried about that. So if they're the things that really matter to you, they become the goal. They become the goal. So how do we do that? Well, if you think about how you normally go on holiday, you're worried about this. Some people in the back of their minds are thinking, I need to get as much food down as possible. Those kinds of things. But actually, when you think about the holiday itself, you're creating memories. So how do you create these memories? And many people, I think, go and think about their bodies a lot and they think, oh, I need to maintain the work I've done and things like that. Think about it differently. You're doing the work now so that you're more comfortable while you're there. And if that's good enough for you to have a great time, feel more relaxed and enjoy the whole event, then that's fine. And you've done your job. Well done. But if you're going there and thinking, I need to maintain this if I'm way heavier when I get back, who cares? Genuinely, ask yourself this question. Why does it matter what you weigh when you come back? Most people's response to that is, well, I put all this work in before I went. But in your own words, 9 times out of 10, you didn't put that work in for when you got back. You put the work in for when you got there. Now, trivia aside, it's important to note that when you travel and when you go away and you eat different foods, you will weigh different because you've eaten different food. You've probably restored a lot more weight in terms of water. The likelihood you've gained a little bit of fat is probably quite high because you'll have enjoyed a lot more food. So this is where the training process and the nutrition is really important, because if you come back from that holiday and you do exactly what you did before you went, you don't even need to be in a deficit, you just eat at maintenance. The likelihood is you'll lose any of the weight that you gained and you'll go back to feeling great. The important part is that you don't have to do that, right? We're not saying, oh, you need to earn the holiday and then you need to burn it off afterwards. That is 100 billion% not what I'm saying. So if any of you have taken that away from this, please go back and listen to it, because that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that I know what it's like. I once gained 5.5 kilos on a holiday because I'd never been all-inclusive before. I dieted hard into it because I was, really wanted to look good. And obviously as a coach, I feel the pressure to look like a coach. Not anymore, I don't, but I did certainly, I'm talking about 6 or 7 years ago. I just never had experienced an all-inclusive, and I must have had about 8 pancakes and 2 omelettes for breakfast and God knows what else through the day. In fact, I actually do remember, I must have had, because my brother-in-law and we used to play so much sport on holiday. We had a little routine where we would do first things first, we'd have breakfast. Then we'd go for pancakes. Then we'd play some ping pong or table tennis. Then we'd play this little rugby kicking game. It's a bit like golf. Then we would go and get waffles. Then we would go and get this Turkish thing, which was a little bit like a sweet omelette with cheese in it. It was really nice. We'd have a couple of them. Then we would have lunch, and it was usually like a full pizza. Now, we were super active, but equally in my head, I was thinking, I've never had this much availability of food, and I was lapping that up. And if you'd have asked me to stop eating at the time, I would have said, oh, I'm just enjoying the food. The truth is what I was actually doing was I was satisfying that FOMO. I was thinking, I might not ever get this again. So I'm just going to keep maximizing opportunities. Now, obviously, this is quite a few years ago now. Now I try to maximize the opportunity of how good it feels. And what I mean by that is that typically 80% of the enjoyment of food that we get comes from the first 20% of what you eat. And food companies know this. How often do you see somebody open something and take the first bite? It's never the last bite, is it? It's never the last bit of chocolate. There is one advert, I think, that do that, like specialize in like, the last one. But typically, Maltesers open the bag, let them roll out, eat one, break off a bit of chocolate when the whole bar is there. We all know that first bit of chocolate, that first bit of sweet, that first chip from McDonald's is the nicest one. And then what we do is we keep eating and eating and eating and eating because we want to try and replicate the feeling we had after that first chip or that first bit of chocolate. It's just not coming because it's novel. It's novel. Imagine the first hit of coffee you ever had. Oh my God, I remember mine like it was yesterday. It just changed my day entirely. So when you think of these things, what I do now is I try and enjoy that experience and I try and live in the moment of really, instead of it being, I need to do loads, I need to do less, but I need to do loads of it. So instead of whacking a pizza back in 5 seconds flat, I'd sit there and I'd actually really enjoy. So instead of eating loads of pizza, I would do loads of eating of the same pizza. I would be looking at it, I'd be enjoying it, I'd be tasting it. And so, as I said, I do know what it's like. Off the back of that holiday, I'm pretty sure I gained between 5 and 6 kilos. Now, I would have lost that quite quickly, I expect, off the back. But I strictly remember not losing all of it because I did. I gained fat because I literally ate so much food. And so I do know what it's like to come back off holiday and feel the pressure and feel like you need to diet. But the truth is, what will happen then is you won't feel like it. You'll have no motivation because your motivation was the holiday and all of a sudden you've gained that weight. You won't want to go to the gym and so on and so forth. So whatever process we set up, we need to make sure that it's that process, irrespective of the deficit, that needs to continue afterwards because else that cycle continues. So the important thing for me in doing all of this with my team is that we enjoy the break. It is a massive privilege to go on holiday, yet so many of us book holidays, and I include myself in this situation, and then we get anxious about it. So how do we do that? Well, it has to come from that first attempt. So if you're listening to this now and going into this year, this is that first attempt. This year will be different. And I don't mean different because you're going to diet harder and get a better result. It's going to be different because you're going to make yourself enjoy the holiday so much more through the things you're going to do and the mindset changes that you can make between now and then. I would bet a large amount of money that... Actually, would I? Yeah, I think I would. I would do this. If you had a person who could change the way they felt without going to the gym and without dieting, but they could change the way they felt, that person would be happier than the person who achieved the goal of losing the body fat. Because if you change the body, but you don't change the mindset, you're still going to walk around the pool thinking everyone's looking at you. You're still going to be hyper worried that you don't fit the bikini properly. You're still going to be worried of all these things. Versus the person who feels good in themselves, whatever body that is, because they've done some training and they just, they've not lost any weight or anything, but they feel good because the mood is good and so on. So I would bear that in mind, and I would finish this. I've given you quite a lot to go over here, but I'd finish this by saying the goal of the holiday needs to be met, just like the goal of fat loss needs to be met other times of year, depending on when you do it and if you are the person who's doing it. And just like the goal of fat loss, how do you set yourself up a process that means you're going to be able to enjoy that holiday to the max? This is something we do with all of our team. We have like little holiday plans. And essentially, for some people, it's just a case of them saying, Xander, I'm signing off for 2 weeks, mate. I'll catch you when I'm back. Love it for you. I'll be here every day. Just give me a shout if you need anything. But other than that, have the best time. Some people are like, hey, look, can I have some kind of structure here because I've never done this very well before? Absolutely, you can. No problem. And we've got a ton of different helpful tips that can go along with that, such as how to manage all you can eat, which literally was constructed by me, as I said to you earlier, because I have historically been horrific at managing all you can eat. But I learned how to do it, and it's a strategy I've implemented with so many of my clients, and it works incredibly successfully. Even, may I add, for things like bottomless brunches, it works as well. So that's cool. Anyway, that's all from me today. If you have any questions, or you're going on holiday, your friends are going on holiday, you and your friends are going on holiday, and you think that they would benefit from this podcast, please do send it to them, because as always, and I say this every single week, my aim is to help as many people as I can. So if they listen to this and it changes the dynamic that they have with themselves, they have with their holiday, and fundamentally in 3 months' time they come back from that holiday feeling like $1 million fucking dollars, we've all done our jobs here. Right? That's the most important thing. And as always, if you are anxious or concerned or worried or in a position where you are just not comfortable at the moment and you have a holiday booked and you'd like a bit of extra support, it would be our pleasure to support you. It would be our pleasure to help you. Please just reach out. You can reach me at on Instagram at Suzander_JLX. Always forget my tag. I see it every day. I should know it by now. Just literally say, hey, I just listened to your podcast. I'd like to chat about coaching, or I'd like to just have a chat about this concept that you said. And it would be my absolute pleasure. All right. I'm forever handing out cool links because I do like talking to people far more than I like typing on Instagram, because I like to get a bit of context and then help. So yeah, do hit me up if there's anything I can do to help, or of course, if you are interested in coaching. For now though, a real pleasure. Take good care. Bye for now.